People were prudish back then, weren't they? If they saw his penis, they'd probably have a stroke, wouldn't they?
Probably. I don't think that would have made it onto the media. Oh, God.
That's not a joke. What's funny about that? If a policeman broke the law, would he be able to arrest himself?
I don't think so, no.
What he's saying might actually be stupid, but it's hard to tell because he says it with clever words.
We don't want pedagogic figures coming in and didactically shouting at us.
So the only people who can actually tell if he's stupid are clever themselves, and they think everyone's stupid compared to them anyway.
Was Beethoven good at music?
Yeah, I mean, he's considered to be the best composer of Western classical music ever.
Beethoven wrote that song that goes da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. What do those lyrics mean?
Well...
When my friend Paul went to Thailand, he had a bad pill and ended up crying and trying to run into the sea for 3 weeks. Next time on Moments of Wonder, I'll be asking, how much are new trousers? Why was it so dangerous to show Elvis from the waist down? Was he naked underneath, like a pervert on a Zoom call?
Then he brought out a book called Revolution about how unfair everything is. And so you'd know he meant it. He pulled a serious face on the front. It was about how catapultism is naughty and how we could build a better world if we were nice to each other instead of spending all our time thinking about coins.
Early cave artists started out painting whatever was close to hand, like their hands. Then they branched out into stories. Initially, just boring stories about cows standing still. But soon they began creating white-knuckle fight scenes like this. Humans versus cows 2D. To a caveman, this was the thrilling equivalent of Fast and Furious Part 7. I found it boring, but I wasn't sure if it was boring because it was boring or boring because it was good, like how the theatre's good but totally boring. Bruce Willis, right, had done this film called A Good Day to Die Hard, and it had this brilliant trailer full of like amazing things happening, like explosions and more explosions, which is brilliantly done. All the fire looks hot and everything. Moonlighting looked brilliant, sort of effervescent, like full of life, but not as good as the new film that looks amazing with all the stuff that blows up and the exciting shooting and everything, and all the computerised pictures where everything explodes and the big writing and the banging and the booming sounds. In terms of noise alone, it's probably the best film ever. Like once my mate Paul was slicing a pear at a festival with his penknife, and it was just unbearably tense to watch because he was really drunk and sort of cutting it in the hand he was holding it in, and I could hardly stand to watch that.
He'd talk about how the status quo keeps the working classes enslaved, which I found sort of boring compared to the stuff he used to do about putting his dinkle into granddaughters. They had all cameras outside and they flew over in a helicopter so you could tell what a building looks like from the air when there's police inside it that you can't see. Usually politics is really boring, but this year it got more interesting because it had Russell Brand in it. It was good because when politicians talk, they use all this boring language normal people don't use, that you can't understand. But he cut through all that by talking in Victorian. My mate Paul says the virus is spread by a new 5G phone signal, but the mainstream media is trying to cover that up just because it isn't true. And the helicopter and everything. And then him killing people, like really killing lots of people with guns, like people with mums and dads in histories. And he just mows them all down because they're sort of bad, probably. I don't know, I haven't seen it. There was this exciting historical drama thing about these four sort of hat and beard men who had these lightsaber fights, except the lightsabers are made out of metal instead of electricity or whatever lightsabers are made out of. It's like a children's thing, but for adults. So it's like for adult children. Some people said the government was secretly going for a policy of herd immunity, which is what happens when the majority of the population has already had something and won't ever get it again, so it totally dies out. Like what happened with fidget spinners. A rules is basically a collection of laws.
The first example being the Ten Commandments, which were left on a hill by God. Many of those laws, killing, gravity, and the one about not interfering with oxes, are still used today, even though God's dead. Phone companies say 5G is safe, but they can't know because 5G is totally unlike anything we've seen before, apart from 4G and 3G and 2G and 1G, which I think was called WAP, probably to put us off the scent. Anyway, this year Epstein died in a freak necktie accident while one of his prison guards was blinking for too long. Anyway, now they're trying to impeach him, which I think is some sort of skin treatment to make him the right colour again. The last president who got impeached was Bill Clinton, who had to resign and was never seen or heard of again. But then Clinton's crimes were unforgivable, like doing hand and mouth stuff with a lady who wasn't his wife. I don't know what Trump's accused of, but I'd be amazed if he's ever done something as bad as that. Next time on Moments of Wonder, I'll be finding out how all these little flaws make it easier to get between the big flaws. Apparently everyone's caught polarisation, which is this sort of brain disease where you're angry all the time. It spreads on the internet and there's no vaccine for it yet. And even if there was, I wouldn't take it because I don't believe in vaccines anymore because of Facebook. The good thing is now we've got backup copies of all these animals, so when the environment goes to shit and all the real ones die, we can still go to the zoo in VR. It's quite controversial, like Joaquin Phoenix is totally appropriating clown culture in it. There's whole scenes where he's in whiteface. I mean, I know it was a different time when they shot it in 1981, but he must be mortified. It's resurfaced now. He'll probably never get cast in anything ever again. If there wasn't police, we'd be able to do what we liked, which is great. But then the police wouldn't be able to do what they liked, which is be the police, and that would be against their human rights. Normally I'd just ignore the terrified pleading of a child, but even I've noticed the weather's been a bit weird this year, like it's on shuffle mode. 1 minute it was colder than ever, and then it was wetter than ever, then it was hotter than ever. At one point, the Amazon caught fire, which must have been a real blow to those people trying to chop it down. It shows even men who've been trained to kill and have been handed implements of death by the state still like to let their hair down. They could probably do it as a victory dance, like on the battlefield, over the bodies of people they've killed. And the music's quite loud, which would drown out the screaming. Culturally significant, the Renaissance or Single Ladies by Beyoncé?
They both have their period, they both have their time.
Grown men taking the piss out of a 16-year-old girl sounds cowardly, but when you think about what massive wankers it made them seem to literally everyone, it's an act of extreme heroism in a way. A bit like being a first responder rushing selflessly into the Twin Towers, but the cunts version of that. Next time on Moments of Wonder, I'll be finding out how to get the noise out of plates.